morning and welcome to this special edition of Today. Special coverage, emergency at Sydney Airport. On-board bomb threat, a plane forced to land, one man in custody after a tense runway siege.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And that was Nine's Carl Stefanovic last Tuesday, anchoring a special extended edition of Today, live from Sydney Airport, to cover a mid-air scare from the day before. And two other Nine reporters were on hand to help him, with one stationed at the very same terminal and another just round the corner to give us all angles on
an extraordinary and absolutely terrifying set of circumstances which have resulted in the 45-year-old man being arrested.
Malaysian Airlines flight MH122, bound for Kuala Lumpur, was turned back to Sydney on Monday after a Canberra man, Mohammed Arif, began shouting Allahu Akbar and claiming he had a bomb. But by 4 p.m, the plane had landed, everyone was safe, and Mohammed had admitted it was a hoax. And at 6 p.m. that evening, 12 hours before today's special went to air, Nine News had reported
the cabin crew have checked the bag and have not found a bomb.
And next morning, as Today was broadcast, the ABC was telling viewers
the AFP says that this incident has no impending threat to the community, and there was major disruption at Sydney Airport yesterday with long delays and dozens of flights cancelled, but things appear to be running smoothly today.
Yes, no threat and things running smoothly. But that didn't stop Carl and his producers inviting a former pilot, plus a former police officer and terror expert to Sydney Airport for their special emergency coverage to talk us through the mid-air terror and answer questions like,
how concerned were you when you heard this yesterday about this story?
Yeah, look, when I first saw the footage, quite concerned in the sense that if you're a passenger yourself, you're some 30,000 feet in the air and a gentleman stands up or a man stands up and starts to say those sorts of things, your mind immediately goes back to 9/11.
And if your mind hadn't yet gone back to 9/11, Carl's next guest, aviation security expert Jeff Price, was
an expert witness on the 9/11 attacks in the US,
who was beaming in from Detroit to make the Sydney scare a lot more scary.
Have we got in any way complacent that you can see?
I think we have to a certain extent, just because has not been an attack in over 20 years.
Yes, no attack in over 20 years, which might suggest the safeguards we have in place are working. And probably why the two passengers who spoke to Carl at the airport were relaxed about their experience, despite Carl doing his best to rev them up.
He says he's got a bomb?
That's what he implied.
Yeah.
I don't think he specifically said bomb, but
okay.
Yeah, he was carrying his bag and he said, I've got power in my arms, so...
You were in no doubt that there was intent there?
There was a little
Yeah.
He was making some intent.
How did you feel at that time? How did you and your wife and the kids feel?
We just thought he was not going to, really detonate anything.
Yeah.
A second passenger had also concluded the man was raving and the threat wasn't serious.
My feeling was like, OK, he's bluffing. Like, how would he have got that on?
And while some passengers clearly were worried, especially when they saw on their phones how the media was covering it, their fears subsided after the cabin crew searched his bag.
He was just sitting and they were letting him pray. Like, once we knew he didn't have a bomb in his bag because he pulled out the Quran and his prayer rug, everybody was a bit more chilled,
Over the course of the morning, Today devoted well over an hour to Carl and the air scare story, with 8 separate interviewees and 13 live crosses, with Carl musing that terrorism is still a threat and it could all have turned out differently. While back in the studio, his co-host Sarah Arbo was lining up politician after politician to ask how a man with no bomb and no weapon was able to get on a plane at all.
It's left everyone sort of asking how an incident like this can happen in this day and age and why there aren't better checks and balances in place. How was something like this allowed to happen even in the first place? How concerning is it to you, Premier, that a man was even allowed to board a plane in the first place in this state?
To which the New South Wales Premier reasonably replied,
I don't know what state he was in when he boarded a plane. Obviously, airport security can only do so much.
At that stage, the man was presumably not threatening to let off the bomb, which he didn't actually have. We asked Nine if it thought its coverage was excessive. It told us,
both ABC News Breakfast and Sunrise gave the story extensive coverage with multiple Vox Pops, witnesses and experts, as did we. We made an editorial decision to send our host, and we stand by that decision.
In fact, Nine had more than twice as much coverage as Seven and 7 times as much coverage as the ABC, neither of whom sent their host and 2 reporters to cover the story. But now, to the Voice debate and cries of censorship from News Corp's political warrior Peter Credlin, who complained to readers of The Australian.
It's wrong for Facebook to cancel views it doesn't like rather than be the platform for free speech that it used to claim to be.
So, what is her beef?
It's a lie.
Well, on 3rd of August, Sky News posted a Credlin editorial to Facebook in which she claimed the Uluru Statement from the Heart is not 1 page but 26 pages long and outlines a hidden agenda of treaty and reparations, with the Sky host describing the missing bits as full of
anger, grievance, separatism, the need to undo as far as possible the last 240 years of Australian history.
Credlin, who wants Australians to vote no, claimed in her editorial that the full document had been hidden from voters and only revealed by FOI, which is not actually correct. And writing in The Australian, she said that after the post had been up on Facebook for a week,
the big tech censors blanked it out, plastering this statement where the video used to be. False information checked by independent fact-checkers.
And indeed, that is roughly what happened, with Facebook branding one, but not all copies of her post, false information, and a CY button clicking through to this RMIT Fact Lab verdict.
False. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is a 1-page document, as confirmed by its authors.
But if you hit See Post, you could then get through to Credlin without further interference. By this time, Uluru architect and law professor Megan Davis, who said in 2018 that the statement was a very lengthy document of about 18 to 20 pages, denounced Credlin's claim in The Australian as a smear job that reeks of desperation from the no camp. And one day earlier, Pat Anderson, the Uluru Dialogue co-chair, had fronted ABC 7:30 to say,
the Uluru Statement from the Heart is a 1-pager. It's 439 words. Now, attached to that is pages called Our Story. And what is recorded there is our history according our version of history.
And on Sky News, in a rare example of discord amongst hosts, Credlin's colleague and Yes supporter Chris Kenny had also ripped into Credlin's claims with an editorial of his own.
It is simply not true. It is nonsense. Here's the Uluru Statement, 1 page, 400 words. It's on posters all around the country. These pages are not the Uluru Statement. They are not government policy.
So, did Credlin concede defeat and run up the white flag? No, it was handbags at 6 paces on Sky, with a new salvo to say that Kenny and the 1-page team were hiding stuff from us.
The very things that the PM and Chris Kenny don't want you to understand, because if you did understand them, you wouldn't vote for their voice. And there's been one almighty cover-up here, from the top of the government right to the Prime Minister and down to sections of the media.
And what are the so-called hidden 25 pages? Chris Kenny points out they are background notes from the Referendum Council's final report, which are
not new, not hidden, not a secret statement. They are not proof of some bizarre conspiracy to keep the full Uluru Statement secret from the nation.
While on 3AW, the PM was almost as dismissive, telling Neil Mitchell,
what they are is a record of meetings. They're records of the big lead-up that happened in the lead-up to, ironically, the lead-up to the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Do you agree with most of what is said in those 25 pages?
I haven't read it.
You haven't read it?
There's 120 pages. Why would I? I know what the conclusion is. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is 1 page. That's the conclusion.
So, there you go. The Uluru Statement is expressed on 1 page, but there are many more pages of notes and background, which it must be said the Australian public are not voting on, where matters like a treaty and reparations are raised. So, should Facebook have labelled her claim false? A spokesperson for Meta told Media Watch it wasn't us.
This fact check was applied by an independent fact checker and not Meta.
And that is true. But it was Meta that slapped it on. And given that there may be some point in what Credlin is saying, we think a disputed label would be more appropriate. But now, to another Spotlight exclusive with Bruce Lehrmann, plus some key players in his rape trial, which 7 promoted like this.
It's all about to detonate. Explosive new claims in Australia's most infamous rape trial. New bombshell claims.
Last Sunday night, Bruce Lehrmann, his defence barrister Stephen Whybrow and former employer Senator Linda Reynolds spoke to Seven's Liam Bartlett following the damning findings of an inquiry into the way his rape charge was prosecuted. And Lehrmann was out for blood, or rather, money.
And you want, what, how much from the ACT government and Channel 10 and the ABC? How much?
We haven't put figures on it, but there needs to be some compensation for me.
All right, so you want at least 4 or 5 million. I'll put words in your mouth. Maybe 6 million.
There we go. We have a figure. The old tabloid trick. And how effective it was, because, come morning, it was that figure and that piece of news that was seized on by 7 Sunrise.
New developments, Bruce Lehrmann bombshell, the shock lawsuit that could net him $6 million in damages over the Parliament House rape case.
And it was the same $6 million bombshell that 7 followed up with live crosses throughout the morning.
Rachel Baxter in Canberra. Rachel, he's considering further legal action this morning.
Good morning, Nat. Yeah, he is. In fact, in the interview, he says he's seeking up to $6 million in damages.
But if you thought that bombshell news sounded a little familiar, here is 7 News 3 weeks ago telling us...
Bruce Lehrmann says he'll demand millions in compensation if it's found the ACT prosecutor mishandled Brittany Higgins' rape allegations.
So, Spotlight's revelation was not so exclusive after all, given that the only new bit of information was the figure their interviewer supplied. Not so much a bombshell as a bum cell. Meanwhile, there was an exclusive revelation about the alleged rape that 7 all but missed, which News Corp's Samantha Maiden was quick to follow up.
Former Defence Minister Linda Reynolds has recanted her Supreme Court evidence that she was never told by a Chief of Staff that Brittany Higgins had disclosed, "I remember him on top of me."
That was significant, going back on what she said on oath in court. Yet, as Maiden noted, when Reynolds performed this backflip, Spotlight's Liam Bartlett let it pass, unremarked.
My concern and Fiona's concern was by the end of that week, she had said that she thought maybe something sexual had happened. In fact, the expression she used is he was on top of me.
Surely worth a follow-up question to Lehrmann since they had him on the programme, and again on Sunrise the next day. But 7 missed its chance. And lastly, 2 red faces at the Financial Review over a question it should never have asked.
Does Bridget McKenzie really have a PhD in constitutional law?
Last Thursday, the AFR's legal editor, Michael Pelly, was getting excited about a Sky News interview with the National Party senator and musing,
"Experts in the field have been thick on the ground during the Voice to Parliament debate, so why not one more?"
According to Pelly, Sky's Sherry Markson had mistakenly granted McKenzie a doctorate during an interview on The Voice by saying,
"You're a constitutional lawyer. You have a PhD in the subject. Why do you think that the majority of Australians are not supportive of The Voice?"
And, said Pelly, granting McKenzie that distinction was totally wrong.
Alas, it is not true that McKenzie has a PhD in constitutional law. Her parliamentary profile says she has 2 degrees from Deakin University, a Bachelor of Teaching and a Bachelor of Applied Science.
A trivial point, yes, but in the eyes of the AFR, a gotcha worth printing. But it didn't last long. 4 hours later, it had disappeared, and here is why.
Correction.
The story relied on a transcript provided to the media by the Labor MP and Assistant Minister Matt Thistlethwaite. The transcript was incorrect, and the story has been retracted.
Whoops! Clearly, no one at the paper thought to watch the actual interview, because had they done so, they would have discovered that Sherry Markson had said no such thing, and that the 3 other quotes used by the AFR did not exist either. So, what went wrong? Matt Thistlethwaite's office confirms it was their mistake and the transcript sent to journalists was incorrect. Where the extra material came from, no one knows, with AI software being blamed for the botch-up. But for journalists, it's an important lesson. If you are relying on a political transcript for a professional put-down, then it's wise to check and check again. Otherwise, you could end up on Media Watch, and mortification will be the end result. That's all from us for tonight. You can read statements from Nine and Meta on our website. Don't forget Media Bites every Thursday on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, till next week, goodbye.